Hello and welcome to this review of my Corsair MAKR 75 keyboard. This was a donation from Corsair. It's been a while since we had one of them on the channel. I've reviewed a bunch of them though, from the venerable K70 to the blitzy K100, so it's interesting to see what they've come up with this time. So in my experience, Corsair are a very typical premium keyboard manufacturer, similar to, for example, Razer in terms of modus operandi. Namely, it's mainly overpriced junk that lags years behind the rest of the market. For example, they still sell the K70, nowadays it's a TKL instead of a full size and the styling is slightly different, and it still costs $150, which is what Hall effect boards are already going for nowadays, even though the K70 is only MX based. And even after all these years, it still doesn't have hot swap sockets. I think even the Razer Black Widow, which otherwise falls into the same overpriced, outdated junk category, has hot swap sockets now. That's how far behind this is. With a lot of these big brands, you mainly pay for the logo, as the quality is no better, or in some cases actually worse, than many cheap-ass unknown brands. Plus, they tend to be very slow to innovate. It's usually smaller companies that take the risk of coming up with a new product first, and if that works, the big boys follow suit a few years later. That's not to say they're incapable of making something good though. The K100 I reviewed a while ago was an interesting optoelectric model, and a battle cruiser no less, and after that they followed with a Hall effect model as well, this K70 Max, which I've also reviewed, and those were pretty good. So can this MAKR 75 stand up to the competition? Well, let's first look at what it is really. Basically, this is Corsair's version of a custom DIY kit type keyboard. Not exactly a new concept by now. I think Glorious was one of the first to pioneer this idea about 4.5 years ago, but like I said, big companies like this tend to lag a few years behind anyway. However, the most important question is, did they do it right? Now, to kick off, one thing I like is that they made a pretty professional looking purchasing thing for it on their website. Basically, it allows you to build your keyboard by selecting what parts you want. Some suppliers make a really messy sales page with 1 billion buttons for different configurations that you have to pick between, but here you can just go through separate menus to pick what you want, which is nice. So for example, first you pick your layout. Nice that they do ISO layouts. That is one of the advantages of big manufacturers actually. Then frame color, switch plate, switches, keycaps, and whether or not you want the optional LCD module and wireless module. So the most bare bones kit is just the chassis, plate and stabs, but no keycaps or switches, and that comes in at €170, whereas the top of the line version that they sent me with all the bits and bobs, so I could show it off to you of course, is $345. You can choose whether you want it pre-built or as a parts kit. I had it as loose parts, which I showed in the unboxing video. So, in the full kit, what do you get? Obviously, there's the keyboard and the keycaps, as well as some tools, the optional FR4 plate, the optional screen module, the optional wireless module, and switches, and switches, and switches, and safety and compliance information, and safety and compliance information, and safety and compliance information, and a warranty guide, 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 and a warranty guide. You can choose between 4 different types of switches, all MLX series: Plasma, Quantum, Fusion and Pulse, and they're MX type contact-based switches. Now, it's been a while since I looked at just normal switches. By default, they'll give you 3 boxes of the switch type you select, but they gave me a few extra ones to test out. I mainly went with the purple ones, which are so-called thocky mechanical switches. Obviously that doesn't mean anything, but basically they're just light linears. I sprinkled some of the other ones on other parts of the keyboard as well for testing purposes, but frankly they more or less all feel the same. The one exception to this, of course, is the Fusion switches, the yellow ones, which are the tactile option, and surprisingly, these are actually really tactile. They're simple notch-based switches, but for an MX-based tactile switch, I'd say these are pretty good. The main ones I used, the purple ones, I personally find a little bit too light despite them not being speed switches or anything. I actuate them a bit too easily, which leads to a lot of typing mistakes on this keyboard. And this is where I realized I'd been spoiled with adjustable actuation keyboards maybe a bit too much of late. Especially for the spacebar, I'd like to have a stiffer switch, though this model is hot swappable, so doing that should be easy, thankfully. Smoothness wise, they're pre-lubed, and for a contact based switch, it's pretty good. I honestly can't feel too much friction going on here. I mean, I still prefer an analog contactless switch obviously, but with what they had, I think they did a good job in that regard. As the title suggests, it's a 75% keyboard with a volume wheel, and it uses Corsair's newer styling that I showed off on their budget line a while ago on the K70 Core, which used a different type of MLX switch. Now, I personally think that's a shame. The good old original K70 was overpriced, outdated, and badly made, sure, but the one thing I'll say is that it's always been a pretty good looking keyboard though, with the black anodized aluminium plate and that characteristic beveled edge that's been copied by other manufacturers over the years. I maintain a classic K70 with simple red backlighting, especially the really old ones before they started using cyber fonts. That's a good look. The volume wheel is also different. It used to be a horizontal type, laying flat, but with the newer generation they moved to stand-up vertical ones instead. I think the horizontal one looks better, but the vertical one is easier to use, more accessible, and takes up less space, so I understand the change. The most surprising thing about this keyboard, in my opinion at least, is the housing, which is where it differs most from other keyboards in this category. Normally these aluminium keyboards tend to have very blocky, simple shapes with acute edges and very little in the way of detailing, but this has a softer, much more intricate shape, especially at the back, while maintaining a very nice finish. It's much more sculpted, I think is the right word, than other keyboards I've seen. It's based on the K70 Core shape, which, like I said, I'm not really a fan of, but if you don't like blocky keyboards, maybe this could be a nice alternative. The keyboard is also surprisingly light. I suppose that the way they milled it, they removed quite a lot of material compared to a brick-shaped aluminium keyboard, and the housing is fairly thin overall. It weighs 1.28 kilos. If you compare it to, for example, the Lemo Key L5 I reviewed recently, it's more than half a kilo lighter. This one is about 1.84 kilos, or in imperial units. For once, you can actually disassemble the keyboard, must be a Corsair first, and that way you can install the optional FR4 plate instead of the polycarbonate one that's supplied by default, as well as the LCD module, which takes up the place of the volume wheel. Speaking of which, the LCD module looks like this. It seems very high res despite its small size, and though it's square underneath this panel, the top case covers it up into a circle shape. You can have all kinds of stuff projected here, etc., but by default it shows the Corsair logo like this. You can get a wide array of keycaps from them, including black or white ABS double shots, tri-colored PBT double shots, which is what this one has, and 10 different flavors of PBT die subs, some with quite intricate and good-looking themes. The ones included with this keyboard contain the extra caps needed to make a full-size set, so you can repurpose them on another board if so desired, which is nice. Unfortunately, these PBT double shots are extremely poor in quality, one of the worst I've seen in a long time. They look so much like basically any generic Alibaba $10 keycap set that I had to double check with Corsair to make sure they OEM'd them, because this is just abysmal, and in fact they still haven't gotten back to me on that either. Also, the lighting is super uneven throughout the legends. I mean, just look at the enter key, for example, or the shift, or the alt GR, or basically anything on the right side. And the PBT content, which they didn't want to divulge to me either, is so low that both shots of the keycaps actually dissolve in acetone. That's how bad it is. I wouldn't be surprised if the PBT content of these is below 10% or something, just enough to not make it illegal to market these as PBT double shots, I guess. The RGB is okay. Like I said, the poorly done legends kind of fuck up the effect with the horrific light distribution, but otherwise it's passable. You know, I just realized it's actually quite impressive that they got the legends to look so bad. Usually you see that only with very thinly printed legends. You know, those are just more difficult to light evenly. But here the legends are quite thick and they still look bad. Oh yeah, and I think the font is still too cyber bullshit for me, but that's a matter of personal taste, I guess. Something else they sent in is one of these extra tough airline style cables with the detachable thing in the middle and a nice coil here. I can't actually find this in the MAKR suite thing anymore, so I have no idea how much this cost or if you can even still get it, but it's pretty good. Taut and it pulls a bit, but that's what you have the coil for. So what do I think of it? Well, frankly, I think it's pretty disappointing, especially if you take the price into account. I mean, 170 euros for a bare bones kit. You pay way less than that for a fully decked out Hall effect keyboard nowadays. And 345 euros for the whole shebang. I mean, that's $400. You can buy a Model F Repro for that kind of money. The biggest advantage of this should have been that it's a custom-like project that's made by a big company. That way you don't have to wait for 10 years, don't have to pay $1 billion to get something like this made, because big companies can do the same thing much easier and much cheaper. However, they're years late with this idea, and frankly companies like Keychron do it way better and cheaper. Take the Q1HE for example that I reviewed a while ago. Way better switches, analog Hall effect with adjustable actuation, massive chassis pre-built with all kinds of layers, etc., keycaps that blow this thing out of the water, and in my opinion at least, way better looks, and is almost $100 less. I mean, what's the point? 5 or 6 years ago, this would have been a pretty interesting proposition. A full metal keyboard with finely machined body, pre-looped switches, and hot swap sockets. This thing would have been quite the innovation back then, but this, I feel, is simply too little, too late. I think that for the budding keyboard enthusiast who only knows giant brands and wants to dip their toes in the mech waters and get their second or so mech keyboard after a K70, or a Vanguard which replaces it nowadays, this is perfect. It's simple, it's what they know, it's a brand they like, and that's fine. I still know people that like Razer too. But I think that once you've gotten a better feel for mech keyboards, tested the safe shallows a bit, and want to venture into deeper waters, you'll find very little here that will interest you. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.